Hey everyone, my name's Dom, welcome back to the channel. For me at least, it's December the 1st today at the point of filming, so it's time to take a look at what happened in November and what we're expecting for December. So November for me was a really good month, so let's go hear all about it. Okay, so as always with my review and preview videos wrapping up the previous month, I'll run through some stats first of all, and then we'll take a look at the books themselves that I covered in the previous month and a little bit of a look ahead to what I'm thinking of reading in the next one, or I guess since we're there already, we can call it the current month. So for November, I read 3 novels. I also read a novella, but I don't include that on the stats because I feel that it skews it a bit too much because it's only a day's worth of reading for a much smaller title. So novellas, short stories, if I do those as well, I won't tend to include in the main overall stats, but I will of course talk about the individual books themselves. So 3 titles that I read in terms of novels, and they were pretty chunky beasts as well for the most part. So just from those 3 books, I covered 2,170 pages, which is an average of 723 pages per book. The average rating tells us just how much of a good month it was, because it is at a flat 5.0. All 3 of the books I read this month I gave 5 stars to, and even the novella, which was a 95 pager, I gave 4 stars, kind of looked at on a different scale because they are very different animals, novellas to novels. Comparing to the year-to-date figures, that puts me, with 1 month to go until the end of 2021, on 19,727 pages, which is an average of 533 pages per book. And the average rating has now taken a bit of a jump with those 3 5-star reads, and for the year it's now sitting at 3.85. So in terms of the series, 2 of the 3 titles that I read this month were actually openers, so I'm now up to 17 different series that I've started this year. No changes in the next couple of columns. I'm still on 4 series finished and 4 series DNF. Both of the new series that I started I'm up to date with, so that goes up to 10, and the total series that I've currently got ongoing, whether I'm waiting to read the next book or waiting for the next book to be published, is now up to 29. And then as you can see at the bottom, since I had 3 5-star reads last month and I finished the last of those within the last 24 hours, I'm sitting pretty at 0 days since my last 5-star read. So that's a fantastic change from the last couple of videos where I've been just building that number up in the hundreds, because prior to the first of these titles, it was back at the end of June that I had my last book that I rated 5 stars. So definitely a great month for me in terms of what I was reading. 3 titles finished plus a novella might not seem like a lot, but they are pretty big books, as I say, and for someone who doesn't read at a pace of 1 or 2 books a week, it's a really good total for me to be hitting. But it's more about the quality and the enjoyment, and as you can see, with rating a novella at 4 stars and then 3 novels each at 5 stars, I had a really good time in November. So what did I read? Let's go take a look. The first of those novels, sitting behind me on the shelf, was Illborn by Daniel T. Jackson. Now, for all of the books that I read in November, I'm not going to talk too much about them because I do have dedicated reviews either live on the channel or upcoming in the case of one. So check out the review for Illborn by Daniel T. Jackson, which is linked up in the top corner in the cards. This one was a really enjoyable read, as you can tell, because I gave it 5 stars, but it's a debut novel, it's self-published, it's a beast of a book at a little bit over 700 pages, and I loved every minute of it. So go check out the review in a little bit more detail. Cannot recommend this one highly enough. If you haven't taken a look at the book, definitely recommend that you do so. If you like epic fantasy, I can see you're really enjoying this one, having a good time with it like I did. Next up in November, I read The Fall, which is a 95-page novella by Ryan Cahill. Again, this one I'll include in the cards above. I did a dedicated review for Of Blood and Fire, which is the first book in the Bound and a Broken series by Ryan, and I included within that video a bit of an overview of The Fall as well. So once more, go check it out in the cards up in the top corner there. get a bit more detail on both of these books. But The Fall I really liked. As I say, I gave it 4 stars. It was just a fast-paced introduction to a bit of a world history and a bit of the actual world itself. We're dealing with dragons, we're dealing with mages, elves, giants, various monsters. It's just a really good time. The pace just doesn't let go at all. It's just fast paced from start to finish, so it really doesn't take long to get through. But it's a really good introduction to the series itself. And if you are going to read the series, it does give you a bit of background, especially for book 2 in the series. So it doesn't matter if you've read of Blood and Fire, you can still pick up The Fall obviously and read it at any time, but I would recommend reading it before you get to Of Darkness and Light, which is book 2 in the series. So Of Blood and Fire then was the next novel that I've read. This one was at 541 pages, I think it was. And again, it was just an absolute thrill ride. It's much slower paced, obviously, than the frenetic speed of the novella, because it has got those additional pages to get everything set down and to do it, I say to do it right, to do it correctly in terms of a novel, whereas a novella is just a completely different beast and you don't have that space and that freedom to do it. So they are by nature going to be written in very different ways. But with a novel of Blood and Fire, there was that space, as I say, to set the scene, to introduce the characters and a bit of a world and what the story itself was going to be, and to set it up as you go through and you start learning about the characters and the world and what's happening around it. So it was a really, really good time. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I could really see a resemblance to Malice by John Gwynne, which had a very similar kind of opening to the series in terms of the way it made me feel, the way the characters kind of were pictured in my head, some of the things that they were doing. They're obviously very, very different stories. You cannot compare the two stories themselves and say that they're the same tale or anything along those lines, but just the feel, the writing style has got similarities as well, and the general way that it made me feel to have finished reading the book. So if you do enjoy John Gwynne's writing, especially the Faithful and Fallen series, I do recommend checking out the Bound and the Broken series by Ryan Cale. And then the next book that I was kind of scheduling myself to read was a sci-fi, but I got a little bit sidetracked because I received an ARC, actually a review copy of book 2 in the Bound and the Broken of Darkness and Light. This is released on the 31st of December, so there was a bit of a shorter time frame to get this one done, to be able to get a review out to help the author for when the book is actually launched. So I moved that one forward, I bumped Velocity Weapon, and I read instead Of Darkness and Light, which is the beast of all of the ones that I read in November, sitting at 916 pages. And this one was an absolute blast. So I've already just said, and I said previously in my review for it, that I really enjoyed Of Blood and Fire, and I had all of these good thoughts about it that I'm not going to go through here because I've already covered them in the individual dedicated review for the title. But I really had a great time with it, and I thought that the writing and the setup and the world and the story and the characters, everything was just really good. It was right on my street. If anything, Of Darkness and Light just takes it up a notch in every single aspect. This was a fantastic read. Again, I'm not going to go into it in too much detail because I will have a dedicated review up in a week or so's time, and you can read all about it. I need to get my thoughts a little bit more in order first anyway, because I only finished reading this one last night, but it was absolutely outstanding. So definitely well worth 5 stars. So even though I rated Of Blood and Fire at 5 stars, I can comfortably say that Of Darkness and Light is better than Of Blood and Fire. So I can't go beyond 5 stars obviously, so naturally that's where this one sits at, but it is better than Of Blood and Fire in almost every aspect. I really love the characters in it. The writing I think has really matured, and in speaking with Ryan, he said that he wanted to create a multi-POV kind of epic, and I think that's exactly what he's done here. Of Blood and Fire is a little bit more single person. There are a few other perspectives that you do view, as I mentioned in my review for the book, but it is mostly from the point of view of Kaelin, whereas in Of Darkness and Light we do get a lot more viewpoints and a lot more kind of extended viewpoints rather than just odd little snippets here and there. So it definitely feels like it's already a much more developed book, even though it's only the second book that Ryan's actually put out and the second book in this particular world. So that's all I'll say for it for now, because I will get my thoughts in order and put out a dedicated review. But I absolutely loved this one. It was absolutely well worth the 5 stars. And with those epic tomes out of the way, that brought me to the end of November. So what am I going to look forward to in December? Well, as I said, I had been planning and I've been looking forward to reading for a long time now Velocity Weapon, Book 1 of the Protectorate, a sci-fi trilogy by Megan O'Keefe. So my plan is to, or not even my plan, but I am moving this one forward to December. I was kind of tossing up reading it in between the 2 books by Ryan Cahill, but decided to go with Of Darkness and Light just because of the time frame with getting the review out in plenty of time before release date. So I am starting today. Next time I pick up a book, it will be the Book 1 of the Protectorate, Velocity Weapon by Megan O'Keefe. So I'm looking forward to this one. As I say, I have been for a long time and I've finally got round to it, even though I kind of said that last month, but I am dedicated to reading it as my next read. It's already loaded up on my Kindle, ready to go when I next pick that up. Outside of Velocity Weapon, I've got a few other titles that I'm considering for December, but because of the way I read, more of a mood reader, that really does depend where my feelings take me at the time. Part of it will depend on how I feel about Velocity Weapon by the time that I've finished it, because that does tend to set the mood for the next book, how much you enjoy the previous book that you've just finished. So we'll see how that goes. But my options that I'm kind of tinkering with at the moment, I've got book 2 in the Kreidic Sagas by Alicia Wanstall-Burke. This is Legacy of Ghosts. I did quite enjoy book 1, which was Blood of Heirs. Again, link up in the corner to my review for that one. I'm looking forward to seeing what's happened 4 years later, because there's a bit of a time jump between the 2 books, but to see what's happened with Lidan and with Ran 4 years later, to see where this story goes. And that one's going to wrap up in January with the release of Empire of Shadows, I think book 3 is called, and that one apparently is going to be quite a bit bigger than the first 2 books as well. So looking forward to wrapping up that series early on in 2022. But to do that, I need, of course, to read book 2, so that's definitely one of the ones that I'm considering for December. I've then got 2 review copies that I'm considering out of a total of 3 that I currently have kind of in the bank. 2 digital and 1 physical. So I have 2 advanced copies. Both of these are books that are released in February, so I'm thinking of doing one in December and one in January. At the moment, I'm looking towards, it's quite a nice cover, that Mickey 7 by Edward Ashton. This is sci-fi, as you can tell by the astronauts on the front cover. But this is a story about what's called, I think it's an expendable human, a disposable employee. There we go. And he's Mickey number 7. So essentially, when Mickey 1 dies, they just activate Mickey 2 and send him out to continue on Mickey's job. When he dies, Mickey 3 comes to the 4th and so forth. Comes to the 4th, that's bad phrasing, but who cares? And we're dealing here with Mickey number 7. So I'm interested in this one. It sounds quite intriguing, and I'd like to see where this one goes. So I'm kind of aiming a bit more towards this, even though I'm going to be reading a sci-fi in Velocity Weapon. I think this one is going to be one of the titles that I read for December. The other advance review copy for February, which I'm probably looking towards January, but we'll see how the feelings go, is Justice of Kings by Richard Swan, I think it is. This is another one which sounds really interesting. It looks quite intriguing in the cover and the storyline, and we'll see how that one goes when I get to it either this month or next month. The third title, the third review copy that I've got is not an advanced copy, so there's not the same kind of time frame attached to it, but I do like to read review copies early on because there's kind of an obligation to the author who's provided, in this instance, a review copy. I'm not going to leave it there for 6 months or so and just not get around to it. But this one is titled called Paladin Unbound by Jeff Spate. I had a nice chat with the author, he seems a lovely guy, and he sent me a review copy, so I'm quite interested in this one as well. It does sound quite an interesting read, a bit of mystery to go along with the fantasy story, so I don't tend to see too many fantasies with kind of mystery elements, so I'm interested to see how that goes and how much of a part it plays in the book. But that's one of the other titles, so I'm thinking Paladin Unbound and then probably Mickey 7 and just leaving Justice of Kings until January. But as with everything else, we'll see how it goes, and as November went, we'll see if anything else kind of comes along and, oh, shiny, takes my attention away from these titles. So there we have my quick November review, December preview. We'll see how it goes and see how well I can stick to these ones, but the beauty of it is they are kind of what you might call the MB or the might be read rather than a definitive to be read. So I'm not bothered if I do stray from it, but there is more of an obligation with these ones, and at least 2 of them I do need to read within the next 2 months, ready to have reviews out to help the authors on release dates, both of which are in February. So we'll see how those go anyway, and regardless of which one ends up being first, I'll get a review of both of them out to you over the next few weeks on the channel. So that's it anyway. I hope you all had a good month in November as well. Let me know down in the comments how your reading went and what you're looking forward to in December. Have you got any series that you're desperate to finish off before the end of the year? Or are you going to be starting any new series before 2022? I'm all ears. As usual, if you like the video, do the like and subscribe stuff. I'll hopefully see you again soon, but take care of yourselves in the meantime. Read some good books, and I'll see you later.